part of the reason play is so incredible is that it exercises executive function skills. A pitfall at that age is parents feeling like they have to intervene.
Do you think kids should get paid for chores?
Having chores is hugely important. We have like a lot of delayed adolescence. They don't have a reason to stretch that uncomfortable
and they're almost crippled to make a decision on their own.
And waiting for us, and that is not what we want.
Hey guys, I'm Brittany Xavier.
And I'm Anthony Xavier.
And you're listening to The Long Game. You have 2 teenagers?
I have 2 teenagers that are mine, all mine, and then I have 2 step teenagers.
Okay.
So I have four teenagers.
Okay, I want to ask you, jumping right in, what's a misconception about teenagers from now, your experience, and then actually having a teenager?
Oh, I think that from the literature that there was like a whole myth of storm and stress, that it's just like all awful. And in fact, teenagers are the best. It's just that the stakes are really high when they do get awful.
That's so true.
It's scarier. It's just scarier to like lose the connection. But in terms of having a teenager or many teenagers, since you guys are used to having to care for little tiny human, like that's exhausting. And teenagers, they are fully capable of physical care. They just need you to be sort of like a cat in the house, available to be pet as needed, but like not remotely. There's not as much work. It's a lot of zipping it.
I love that.
I don't do it, but I'm supposed to.
I know. I'm like, I need to stop giving my opinion all the time. We have a 17-year-old daughter. Or, well, she's almost 18.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had her when I was 20, and I met him when she was 3. So she only knows him as her dad, which is really
amazing. Sweet. Okay, so I have a 17-year-old.
Okay.
And yeah, it's really hard to transition from like, I know everything to...
She has to have her own opinion.
You have to be able, you just gotta.
I know. And he'll tell me, he's like, just don't say anything. And
or
so hard.
Let you just throw it out there. And if she wants to.
Right. She doesn't have to take my advice.
Yeah. But there are times where you're like, okay, you need to do this. I'm like, just let her
Jaden,
be.
you have this good opportunity. You need to take this. And
she's so hard.
I know. And I'm like, I have to let her fail.
Yeah.
So what is a good tip that you could give me for parenting? She's in that transition to being an adult. She's going to be moving out to college soon.
Same.
And I still worry about her like she's still a kid in the house where we don't go to sleep until she gets home from her curfew. I'm like, okay, I want to make sure she doesn't get in a car accident.
Yeah, of course.
How do I transfer into, okay, she's a full-grown adult?
I mean, the funky thing is that, well, first of all, you just said it. Like, we have to let them fail. And that is so painful. But since we kind of can watch them do things and just kind of know, like sometimes we know how it's going to go, and it would just be so much easier to be like, here's what. We know exactly how this story ends. So if you could just follow points 1, 2, and 3 here, but we can't. So they have to learn. So I think that's the first thing, is just letting them and doing our own, like, we're going to regulate ourselves and just kind of let them do their thing. But also, the hard thing is they turn 18 and they are technically adults, but rarely, particularly in the United States, are they like, we have like a lot of delayed adolescence, and they come live with us, or, they're still they're getting financed by us or supported by us in some way. Finance sounds weird, but
it's true.
We're investing in them.
Yeah.
and they like have much closer relationships with us than ever before. But it's, tricky because you have kids that are going off to college and like calling about which classes should I take and what should I do about this. And I think the thing to do is to give yourself a rule that you don't answer a certain number of texts per day until time has gone by.
Oh, I
You
love
don't
that.
always pick up the phone, just to give them the gift of like figuring it out for themselves.
Right.
And I think that's where we struggle, is we're kind of her outlet. Where some instances where she's in an issue and she's like, Mom, Dad. I'm like, well, have you done X, Y, Z? She's like, well, no. I'm like, so the first thing you did was just yell and call her name. She's like, yes. I'm like, Jay, you got to kind of problem solve. And that's what we've been trying to teach her.
Yes.
But it's very difficult because, the easier solution is just to give her the solution. Yeah.
But I think the only way to do that is truly to not be on demand available, because I think that's what happens. They go off to college and we're still on demand available, or even during the day now, they can contact us all day. Everybody's like, it's, it's my kid. I always have to check. I always have to pick up. But I think we're supposed to check to make sure there's no emergency. And it's translated to, I'll drop everything, even if you just want to say hi. And I say this as somebody who, I have a rising freshman in college. Like, she's going to be off, and I'm definitely going to struggle with this.
Yeah.
And I might have said to her, like, you can just send me a secret emoji and I will fly across the country to have dinner with you.
That's how I'd be. I'm like, you want to hang out? Okay.
Yeah, like, I'm so desperate. However, if I look at other people when I'm not being me, I can see more clearly how hard it is if you get like mom, if the expectation is, or dad, if the expectation is, I'm dropping everything, they don't have a reason to stretch that uncomfortable place.
And they're almost crippled to make a decision on their own.
And waiting for us. And that is not what we want for their emerging adulthood.
Right.
Or even, frankly, emerging high schoolers.
Right. And I know my eyes are watering so much right now. I don't know if I put on my makeup wrong or what.
You're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me if it just starts dripping off.
It starts melting.
Jaden's school, they just implemented where they put their phones in these pouches. And a
if
lot
our
of the
children are at
parents
same
are having pushback on it more than the kids are, because they want to get a hold of their child at school. It's like, why do you need to text your kid at school during the day? I mean, they have an emergency response system if anything happens. There was an earthquake and the school sent an email out to everyone. All the kids are fine. But it's just interesting that the parents feel like they want to get a hold of their kids so much, where it's like, that puts stress on the kids too. Luckily, we're not like that, but.
No, I think that's a big thing. I have two of my kids have they're at different, actually, I guess all of them are at different schools, but my daughters, one is at a school that does the pouches and one doesn't. And the reason the one that doesn't has not implemented it is because the parents have been too upset to not be able to reach their kids during the day.
So strange.
It's so off. I get it, but we have to fight those urges because it's so not fair to our kids.
And it's not like they're 3-year-olds where something, but it's like they're literally driving, they're going to be
they can operate a moving vehicle.
Right.
Like
they're okay.
They should be able to figure out, like, if you've shifted pickup.
Right. Like if you have to wait 15 minutes, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, now we need some tips.
We agree on everything so far, so this is going to be awkward.
So half the time I'm like, okay, I need to stop giving my opinion so much, and then I need to just let her figure it out. If she comes to me and she wants, which she does, and she'll be like, Mom, what do you think? And I'm like, well, what do you think? What would you do if you didn't have me as like your first response? And she's like, this is what I would do. I'm like, okay, that's what I think you should do. But sometimes she just wants to,
I just give her a silence.
Yeah.
She'll
like
ask,
a space.
and I'm more or less, okay, Jay, let's figure this out together. And then I'll kind of figuratively hold her hand through the process. But then she starts to get it. She's like, oh, okay. But yeah, I feel she always comes, Dad. And you have to figure it out. But
yeah. And I was like, girl, we didn't have Google growing up, and we figured it out.
All these resources.
Yeah, you can Google things.
But
I mean, I also think it's like there are two different things to figure out. One is like, how do I buy a plane ticket? Or how do I, fill up the gas in my car? Or something that's like, you definitely can figure that out with the resources available.
Right.
That are not a human doing it for you.
You don't need a video on that, right?
Right. But if it's like, I want to break up with my boyfriend and I'm really struggling with the right way to go about this, then I think we can guide them, but still say, like, do you want my advice or do you want just a sounding board?
Mm-hmm.
Erring on the side of like, let's talk about what you think is a good idea and what feels comfortable for you. And maybe you could add like, so walk me through the rest of how that story goes. Because sometimes we have ideas and we haven't really taken the few steps after we do the thing.
Right.
We just haven't
seen
done
the
that.
Outcome. I love that.
So that's good practice for them to not just make a decision about next steps, but what are the like 3 steps after.
I love that. And I always do that with you when I say, you're like, do you want advice or do you want to just vent? And I'm like, I just want to vent.
Yeah, you just want to vent. And I'm like, okay. Because I'm really...
He's always trying to fix everything. And I'm like...
That's my issue is
that's
anyone who
a
comes...
very manny.
Yeah. That's what I've come to learn is that it's a very guy thing.
Yeah.
Where it's all my children are asking me to fix something. So
No.
she's telling me issues.
You're like,
I'm like,
I can.
I could do it. But then she's like, no, just listen. So,
Don't fix it.
I know it's so hard, but it's true. And I think it's the same thing with young people. It's just like if you have a teenager who bends in the direction of like wanting your advice, it's a little different than the ones who are like bristly and pushing your advice away.
Right. We need advice for our toddler.
Yeah, that's so much harder, right?
I know. I'm like, this is actually the hardest part, the toddler.
Yeah, she's a very strong personality, and
which is so good and
we
positive.
love it. Yes, and are you talking about the demanding issue? Or
yeah,
not
sometimes
issue,
I'm
but-
like, am I just doing everything for her? Well, she'd be like, can you grab my water? And I'm like, okay, let me get it. But should you ask, please? Like certain things, it's just like, she's like, oh, can you get this for me? And it's 2 feet away. And I'm getting it
She's
for
very
her.
good at delegating.
Yeah, she's
she
a
can
delegator.
sit and be like, Dad, put my pillow over there. And I'm like, okay. But we're
like-
just so into the routine. We're like, okay,
And I'm like,
Poppy,
hurry,
we're just doing it. And then, but
I'm
she's
like,
sitting.
Should she be demanding us around right now?
Well, I think
feel
it's also because you've got like a little baby cutie pie while you have an almost adult. And so
We have
you're
all
going to be
ranges.
more. There are so many jokes about younger kids because I'm the youngest and I'm definitely like, how's this getting done? It's not going to be me. But I think
Jaden also, our teenager babies her too. She'll be like, Poppy, what do you need? And, she'll go in Jaden's room and say, oh, Mom said I can watch a show down here. And then Jaden will come up and say, did you say she could watch something? I'm like, no, I never said that. I'm like, Poppy, where did you get this from? She's like, oh, well, maybe.
How old is she?
She's 3.
She's very bright, 3-year-old.
Yeah.
She's like, maybe.
I think if you go by this is called autonomy supportive parenting, which is an unnecessary name, but it says what it is. It's just like promoting autonomy, is that you ask yourself, basically, is my child able to do this for themselves? If she is, she's doing it.
Oh, love
Even
that.
if she doesn't want to, because over time she'll just realize that that's, you let kids do for themselves what they can already do, and then you guide and encourage them to do things they can almost do. So you're like remember when they're learning how to get dressed, you might put the sweater over their head, but you let them put their arms in instead of doing the whole thing. And then, or like if you're doing a puzzle, instead of moving the pieces with their hands, you would sort of say like, oh, I wonder if the red piece, is there something else red over there? So you're guiding them, but you're not doing it. And then the last thing is if they definitely have never seen it before, can't do it, you model and then you do it so that they are going to get to the point where they can learn how to do it. But the things where you're like move the pillow and get the water and it's they have capacity, you just say, you can do that. You just, show me how you do that. And if she says like, I don't want to, you could say, I get that, but you can.
So
It's not
good.
being done. Yeah.
She's so funny because she's very independent on certain things. Like she wants to do everything else herself, but certain things she wants us to do it. So I'm like, it's funny because it's like 2 extremes.
But is it something deeper, or is it that's just what toddlers do? They just
No.
see
It's
how,
not deeper. It's just
like,
pushing and
I
checking.
don't think toddlers have any like
well, not like
ulterior motive. They're just kids,
but
Yeah, I think typically it's just like, what can I get away with?
She's like cozy with her blanket. She doesn't want to get up.
Yeah.
She's like,
by the way, I don't either. Like I do that to my, one thing I think is also a benefit of teenagers is I'm like, please turn that light off. Please bring me this. I'm
Jaden
definitely.
does the dishes every night. I'm like, I love that she does the dishes. I'm like, what are we going to do when she moves out?
Yeah. You lose
She has a one chore. That she,
yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm like the trash, the dishes. Like there are certain things that are very luxurious. You cannot ask a toddler.
I know.
But I think it's not deeper, but it is, the wanting you to do it, but it's still like, it's a slippery slope if you're doing everything to not have them feel that it is now a burden when you're asking them or expecting them to do something. So I would just stretch this is really just about like, can I handle their irritation at this or their potential tantrum that could occur if they're just annoyed? But it's short-lived.
What do you think about how to handle tantrums? Because we're really good about not giving into, we have pretty good boundaries. What do you think?
I think we do a good job as
like no means no.
Yeah. We don't if she crosses the line, our thing is we say, okay, well then you need to go to your room, sit on your chair, because she'll cry. And
one thing we do is we never say stop crying. We'll say if you want to cry and scream and her brother's sleeping, I'm like scream it all out in your room.
Wait, how old's her brother?
Oh, he's 1.
Right. Okay.
And their rooms are right next to each other. So when if she's like having a fit,
It disrupts.
he's going to be waking up, which is fine. He's so used to it. But I'm like, he's so chill. But when I put her in, we'll put her in a room on her chair. I'm like, scream it out. She'll cry for a little bit and then she's fine. She comes out, she's like, hey, like acts like nothing.
Yeah.
She'll say sorry
Like, hey,
or
sorry.
I feel like a tantrum is just an expression of the, like whatever there's a mismatch between the skill and the capacity, and it frustrates them. Or if it's not about the skill, it's about the whatever they're not allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great to say like crying is not something you can control. So it wouldn't.
Right.
It's not great when parents are like, stop crying, because it's like that's a feeling. You don't try to control feelings, but you might say, this wakes your brother, or this is disrupting dinner, so let's find a cozy place for you to go do that, and then you can come back and join us whenever. Okay. Some kids, 3 is like with a 1-year-old, you wouldn't, or obviously a 1-year-old, but even an 18-month-old, you wouldn't want to say like go over in this other room to deal with it because they need sort of a warm body sometimes to help regulate. But by 3, if that works for her and she's like, okay, this is my cozy place where I'm allowed to feel my feelings, it's not like I'm in trouble. It's just a space for me to feel my feelings. I think that's great.
Okay. What about like all the things that I'm wondering about? Because we're just like, trying to figure it out. But she is very much like, she wants a certain way of things. And so it's very much like in a routine. And if we break that routine, she's very much like, wait, you didn't sing, for example.
Right.
She's very thrown
We
off.
have to pray first and then sing Jesus Loves Me before bed. So if I, for whatever reason, sing first, she's like, you forgot to pray. And then so we'll have to start over. Is that typical?
If you looked in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, which is like where you would look up, OCD or all sorts of things, any diagnosis, you would think toddlers have every diagnosis because the list is like rigid, inflexible, repetitive, orderly, bossy, blah, everything. Totally, it's not a problem when you're a toddler. The only thing is routines are so safe because you know what to expect. And so we all would love to just be told exactly how everything's going to go and not have it change. Like that is a warm bath of comfort. Like if you knew exactly what to expect so you could focus on everything else and not have your brain flooded with like stress of how will this go? Will this flight be on time? Will, like whatever. So I think it's a fabulous desire to want that calm. I don't think we can provide it all the time. So it's good to periodically, if you forgot to say the prayer first, say, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to remember. Thank you.
She won't let me.
When you say, just curious, she won't let me, that sentence,
okay,
what do you mean?
She will cry.
As she is 3.
Yeah, she'll be like devastated.
Okay.
And
this is great.
And her will is very strong.
And I'm like, he's asleep and I'm just like.
On.
So it's about, I guess my question is the worry that it's like harmful emotionally, or is it just like.
It's more of a hassle for me.
Right, okay.
I'm like, I can't deal with this right now.
So
it's lazy parenting on my end.
Yeah, fine. I think that as long as it's not because you're afraid of her devastation.
Oh gosh, no.
Okay, then it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think if she knows that it's because you're like, I can't handle you being upset, that would be more problematic.
Yeah, no, we're more of like,
I don't have time for this.
Yeah, we're like, Poppy, come on, we got to go to sleep.
She also knows how to milk it too. So she'll say it to her, oh, mommy didn't sing Jesus Loves Me, pray, and then wait, oh, daddy didn't do it. So it's this like dance that we have to do throughout the whole night.
Yeah.
Well, then if you're interested in minimizing that, I would practice on a day when you don't care if she's screaming and bummed out.
Oh, that's so good.
I would just be like, we try to do everything in this order, but when we get the order wrong, that's just life. It's you can call it a beautiful oops. There's a really good book called Beautiful Oops for toddlers. And it's like, the coffee made a ring around a picture, but now the picture's changed. And instead of saying it ruined the picture, now the picture is new. It's got a new look. And it's all these examples of things that didn't go the way you wanted them to go, but what's the outcome? And so I think it's fun starting in toddlerhood to learn that, yes, we like to have this predictable routine, and also interesting. What happens if we do our prayer after? Let's try it.
I love that.
And it's stinks in the beginning, and you do have to have like a sound machine in your son's room or something. But
he's so sweet. He's just like, and then that's the other dynamic that we're going through right now is like, he always wants to give her a hug and a kiss, and he's just so obsessed with her. And she's like, turn around, like doesn't want to look at her. Like, Poppy,
don't look at me, baby.
Sometimes
Elliot.
she is really, really protective of him. Like, she'll be like, don't look at me. But then she'll be like, Mom, you need to shut the door. I don't want him falling down the stairs. Like, she's really protective of him.
Really sweet in this weird way.
So sweet. Like, she will let me know, oh, he's putting something in his mouth. Like, she'll come to me and be like, you know, she's making sure he's fine. But also she's like, no, don't play with my stuff.
Yeah, I think that's what's going like on. Standard sibling.
Okay.
And forever.
I know.
Right? Like if so in school somebody's mean to him, she's going to be like, "Oh, well, you're done."
Yeah.
But like if
don't play with
he
my stuff.
Wants to come sit with her at lunch, she's going to be like,
"No.
Get out of my face."
Okay, that's so good to know because
we never had to deal with that with Jaden just raising her solo as a child, and then we're like, wait, now we have these two little ones. Is this normal? Or are they supposed to?
They're supposed to be little beasts to each other until I will tell you, my daughter, my oldest daughter, and my youngest daughter, they have been so uncharming to each other over the years.
Makes me feel better.
So, and sometimes I look at them and I'm just like, can you do it privately so I don't see it, so that I don't have to feel so like enraged that this is what I've done here? And they're just like, okay. And then Lord knows what they're saying to each other. However, once the oldest is off, like now that it's clear she's going to be away next year, they are so nice to each other. It's so weird.
Oh, interesting, the space.
Yeah, and I see it all the time with other people, but I never have experienced it. And it's really nice. But it takes a long time, and the threat of them leaving.
Right. He's so sweet. Even this morning, I was nursing him, and so sometimes she sleeps in our bed, but it's usually on the weekends.
I'm so sorry that you said that as if I would think that was a bad thing.
Oh, no, but I'm very big on saying Fridays she can sleep in our bed because
that's very predictable.
We kind of.
I'm trying to make it to where it's like we get some alone time too.
I feel like that seems like a reasonable.
And we need to just like have some downtime before we go to bed instead of like she's in bed with us and we're all trying to go to sleep. It's just more for my sanity. And so he's nursing on me. She's dead asleep in the bed, and then he pulls off and he's trying to say "pa," like Poppy. He points to her. And he leans over and kisses her so sweet. She's like, she wakes up on the floor like, why did he kiss me? I'm like, he woke you up as like so sweet. So cute. And I'm just like, precious little boy. But she's just like disgusted with the fact that he kissed her in the morning.
That's really cute.
And I'm just like trying not to laugh. But I'm like, is this
it's all normal.
Dynamic that's normal?
It is so normal.
Okay.
It's so cute for me to hear about because I'm not there.
And he's just like he's just so happy to be there half the time, He's just like, oh, I'm included.
Yeah.
Oh.
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
No.
Yeah, but he'll be so great. It's like, I mean, the risk with the youngest being a boy is that he is just like, he is a prince.
Yeah.
And like all of his older siblings are like taking care of him,
Right. Oh, and Jaden is so just squishes him, kisses him all the time when she gets home. And I do notice that if we do something with him, Poppy will say, well, can you do that with me? Like if we're throwing him in the air or something that's like very to his age. So we'll then, let's lift you up. How do you try to keep it fair with the siblings? Because I don't like when parents constantly compare their like, they're good or bad kids, or they're like comparing their siblings. But it's just like they're each individual kids.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really hard to get sucked into, if this sibling didn't do this, then they're not as good as this sibling, which it's like a slippery slope.
It's first of all, you have a son as your third, and they typically develop their fine motor skills and verbal skills a pinch later. Typically, it doesn't always happen. But so like a lot of times people are like, like this kid is not
up to speed.
Not up to speed because you're used to like a different developmental trajectory. Again, that's not always the case, so I don't want to scare anyone. But I also think it's never fair. And I don't know why we pretend to our kids that it's fair. We're going to parent each kid as they need with the same values. I think our values have to be the same. But the like minutia of how we're managing it, or like what year you got a phone, or when you decided to let one walk alone versus the other, is to their temperament and
I think that's really
your
important.
comfort.
Right, because someone can be a lot more confident. One kid can be more confident than another, and you really have to be aware of that as a parent.
Absolutely. Like, and some kids need, it's like, I think one way to explain it, not to a 1-year-old, but a 3-year-old for sure, is like a very classic example educators use is if everybody gets a cupcake that's coming to the birthday party, is that fair? And they'll probably say yes, the same cupcake. And then you say, well, what if one person has a peanut allergy and they can't have the cupcake because it was made with peanuts? Is that fair? Because they did get the same exact thing. It's not fair. So we shouldn't look at things so, like everything has to be exactly equal. It's really just like, what does each person need?
I love that.
What are some tips now that we're getting into that toddler stage? Some tips that parents should really focus on trying to develop, especially with us and Poppy. What are things that we should really encourage, or
what will screw them up?
Yeah, or just kind of things like this is a pivotal time in their age.
Are you talking about in like encouragement or discipline, or
which area? Where it's or there's some things that parents don't do during this period of time where they should be aware of to really encourage their independence? Or
well, I think the first thing is, which I know, I'm guessing based on just this brief time we've known each other, that she's not sitting on a phone.
No.
So I think phones and too much screen time can be problematic. It's correlational though. It's like, is it problematic because the kind of parent who leaves you on the phone and in front of the screens is also not doing lots of interactions?
It's so true.
Or is it because they're exhausted and working so much they need a break and there's no other support system? Or is it because the screens themselves are actually causing the problem? We don't know, because you can't randomly assign some kids, screens and some kids not. That would not be an ethical study. So a lot of times what's out there in the world in terms of like what's good for kids or not is based in something that we can't really unpack completely.
Yeah.
But I think the most important skills for this age to focus on are executive function skills, which are the things that they're housed in your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex does not fully develop till between 18 and 28 years old, which is why it's so bonkers to be like, you're an adult, you're 18. That's such an arbitrary
They should not be making
cutoff.
Life-altering decisions.
You're making life-altering decisions. Your brain might not be fully developed. And it typically develops a little bit sooner in girls than boys. I'm sorry to gender this so much today, but it happens to be the case.
Yeah.
And so I think the skills that are housed in this executive function category are self-regulation, working memory, attention skills, impulse control, like the challenges that you see in toddlerhood.
Yeah.
And so doing exercises that can bolster those skills are actually more predictive of school and life success than reading, math, and like all the academic skills. So it's kind of you get more bang for your buck focusing on that.
Because we've been really big on focusing on play. So the majority of her day is spent outside. We really want her to be outside.
Fantastic.
And then when she does, because we were kind of falling into this trap of like she had her playroom and she would stay in her pajamas and do her thing in there. But it would take her out of that, okay, you have to get outside and then you can come in after your nap and then you can play like whatever toys you want. But I feel like when everyone sees her, talks to her, they're like, wow, she can like
she can hold a conversation.
She laughs at sarcastic things, or like seems a lot older than 3. But do you think the play is like as important as, because she's not in preschool. Like we're very big on like, just we want you outside. We don't want you inside a classroom all day. Like we want you to be playing.
Play is part of the reason play is so incredible is that it exercises executive function skills. Like you have to figure out you have to do so much problem solving during play.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
So it's actually the most important thing that you do to bolster those skills. And you might do some more intentional play than like always if she's alone outside playing and like she doesn't have the socialization of other people.
Yeah, no, she's not alone.
If you're with other kids, particularly like
She's usually at the park.
Yeah, they have to, for example, the reason pretend play is like the most incredible is because you have to follow a set of rules designed by the people playing. So like a few kids are like, I'm going to be the fairy or I'm going to be the doctor. This is going to be the patient. Like you stay in character. What does that require? It requires a decision about who is who. You have to imagine the mind of someone else. So that's called theory of mind, which develops sometime between ages like late, it's usually like by 4. And it's the idea like, if I were this other person, I might not see the world exactly the same way. I might have a different mental state. I mean, they don't say it like that, but they recognize that like you're the doctor right now and the doctor wouldn't be thinking about what is happening for snack time because the doctor's got to focus on the patient. That requires such a sophisticated brain. And so it also requires impulse control. Like you cannot, and focus, like you can't change your mind in the middle of a game and go do something else. So it's actually incredibly beneficial. I did not even think
about it in that sense.
I can really make anything fun sound.
I'm like, that is so.
I can ruin any fun. But she's so
really good
intentional.
About, she can play, like she loves her kitchen, like playing food. But she can sit there for 30 minutes at a time by herself and just like, I'm
That's
like,
amazing.
What is she talking? She's like,
Dolls
talking to each other. And that's kind of nice. That's our break. We're like, hey, you get 30 minutes to play with your kitchen and, I mean, have at it.
Any time. This is I think a pitfall at that age is parents feeling like they have to intervene during play. If she's playing in that kitchen by herself happily, like enjoy.
Right.
Until she's finished. It's so incredible because it shows you like she's developing attention skills that kids today don't have as many opportunities to build. Because everything is so fast paced and you switch and you change and everybody has to be entertained all the time. It's hard.
And I also don't want to feel like I have to entertain her all day. I'm like, I have a lot of other things to do. And I don't want her to feel like if I'm doing something, she has to be over here. Like when we're making food, she's with me. I'm like, okay, turn on the stove. Like we kind of just give her things to do from a safe perspective. But she's like, we're pulling her in like, hey, you can help us with this.
It's great.
Trying to give her. But sometimes I'm like, is this the right way?
It is. It's so wonderful. First of all, it's the right way because it's the way that works for you guys. But it also happens to be really effective.
Yeah. And I'm trying to make sure that we're aware of what's working for her may not work for Elliot, our youngest son right now. So we're like, we don't know what's going to work with him. And, we just got to go.
Need more structure. And you might decide like this kid needs a classroom setting but it needs to be a different kind. Being open and not having like too many philosophical ideals just so you can pivot as needed is helpful. It's like if you have a birth plan, it always, it's like.
Just be open to what can happen.
You want your kid to be alive and healthy and come out. And if you're so rigid about the birth plan, you'll be, you have higher rates of postpartum depression because you put this unnecessary stress.
Right.
So I think same thing, as long as you're like, you know what, for Poppy, this is really working. This is her, matches her temperament and it's working for us. So it's fantastic. And then you'll see how Elliot does in that same way. It might be exactly perfect for him.
Right now, I do notice he wants to be held a lot more than what I was used to with Poppy. And then I'm already comparing them. I'm like, oh, well, is this normal for... But then again, she was, crawling off doing her own thing, and he just wants to be held a lot of the time. And I wear him a lot in the house. If I'm doing something, I'll just put him on me. But I think I'm like, I love it. It's like, I'm not mad about it. I want to hold him all day.
I want to hold him. I don't even know him.
He's so squishy.
But it took us even when Poppy was born, I think we were so stuck on our schedule or our routine. And we're like, we're not sleeping. This is too hard because we thought this perfect way of parenting from all the books that we've read, it just created
all schedules went out the door with Elliot. We're like, we're not
doing this again. And we had the best sleep, and Elliot was such a chill baby.
And he slept in our bed.
We just overanalyzed it so much with Poppy. We're like, okay, well, you learn and then you kind of pivot. But I do like the idea of you have an idea, you implement it, kind of see what it works.
See how it goes.
And if not, then just make some changes.
Because I think the whole industry of parenting, and I know that's my industry, but I do think like there are certain fundamentals that are just so tried and true about raising our kids. And they are rooted in decades of research. If they align with your values, which they probably do because they're very flexible, I think they're a given. Beyond that, all the details have no scientific weight in terms of like outcomes. So if you were like, what's the right way to, have a kid sleep through the night? It's like, no, there are many different ways to have a kid sleep through the night. Mm-hmm. And we get so passionate about it. But
it's like, why does it matter so much?
Yeah, they need to sleep. That's
sleep.
What needs to happen. Where they sleep, how you get them to sleep, all those things, as long as you're safe, is to taste, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's just preference.
Yeah, and I think there's so much pressure to do it the right way, but you cannot find a developmental psychologist or anybody in kind of an adjacent field that's in the academic world, not in the outward-facing worlds of which I participate. So I am part of this, but you can't find anybody who's like, what is this? They're like, what is this, like parenting approach that I've never heard of that seems to be taking over the zeitgeist? It's like, it's comforting for us sometimes. Like each generation has kind of a way, but it's not because it's the right way. It's just like, if it makes you feel better as a parent, because you're just like, I just need some guidance and I just need to follow something because otherwise I'm going to be overwhelmed. Great.
Right.
But if it makes you feel like, why am I doing this? I'm miserable. It's the wrong thing.
I love that. I think that's exactly what we learned with Poppy. We were trying to go into it with the best advice and all, the best intentions. And it was 14 years in between when I had Jaden. I truthfully didn't remember the day-to-day with her.
Of course not.
It was like a blur, literally.
Right.
And there wasn't all these new techie things to have to track your baby and all these things, all these apps. So I was like, whoa, I feel like I'm just starting this all over in a new era, which I was. And so we went into it with okay, these are what we're going to do. And this is what,
What did the schedule say? Wait, where are my notes? What was the last time I fed her? And
I would literally, instead of just feeding her, I was home with her, right? Instead of feeding her on me, like putting her on my boob, I would pump it out, measure, feed her,
exhausting.
clean the pump.
Oh my God.
And then do it all again. And then I went in with my doctor and he's like, why are you measuring everything?
Yeah.
Like, huh?
What a miserable way to be.
Why are you doing all this extra work? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, want to know everything.
I get it though, because you're like, I have no control anymore. This I can control.
It just was so mind-boggling to me that she was nursing and I didn't know how much she was getting. And he's like, well, she's not losing weight. She's gaining amazing weight. Why are you stressed? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to know the ounces. I'm reading what she should be eating and it was stressing me out. So after we went through that, I said, I'm never doing that again. Or I'm not having any more kids because this is just like way too stressful.
It's too much.
So then with Elliot, we're just like, you know what? As long as he's happy and
you'll know if he's not getting enough food because
he'll
be very unpleasant.
He'll let me know. What is one thing parents come to you with? What's the biggest question you get?
I usually get a scenario with the question, am I screwing up my kid or did this just traumatize my child? Is one. And then I think discipline is just always comes up no matter how much people know, no matter how much you talk about it or think about it. I think scenarios come up and you're like, what, and I just think that's practice. It's a practice.
What is a good tip you can give for someone who wants to implement a little bit more discipline for the structure and the boundaries? And so also I feel like for us it's important because then our children take us seriously. Like they're not, Poppy knows when I'm like, okay, no, you can't do this right now. She's like, oh, fine. Like she eventually gives up.
Give up. Like,
she gives up a little bit.
That's
She's
not
like,
her first answer.
Yeah, it's not her first answer.
No,
but
that's
she won't push me to the fact where she's like, okay, she's not going to do it.
Yeah. And there's recollection where she would hit me, but like just we're playing around and then she'll smack me. I'm like, Poppy. And then, you can tell she's like, oh, I did something
she's
bad.
Like, I probably shouldn't do that one again.
Yeah. And so we don't yell at her, but we're kind of very stern. But what is that fine line where it's like gentle parenting? And I came from how I was parented and, from spanking and not spank. yeah, spanking. Like just
You're like, she's like, no. He's like, yeah.
Real spanking. 30% of the country spanks. It's much more common than people realize still.
Oh, interesting.
I was spanked probably until I was like 12. 13.
What I think that's really important is one of the things that is very important for us to do as parents that is rooted in like science of healthy humans is being reflective about our own experience being parented so that we can make intentional choices instead of going into the automatic, well, this is how I was parented and I turned out okay.
And I think sometimes I tend to, because I'm trying not to replicate exactly my upbringing, so I tend to go the other way and be a little bit more, oh, well, it's fine. And he's more, sometimes I feel like you're a little more strict than me because I'm like, well, they're going through it, they're learning. And he's like, okay, you're being too chill about this.
There's a good balance. I don't think I'm completely parenting the way I was parented because I know there needs to be a different way.
He's so gentle and patient. You're really such a sweet dad.
And that reflect too, because my dad, he would be very stern, but then come back and talk to me about it. Or, okay, how are you feeling? Or there was this closure in a way to when you would get punished. So with Poppy, I know there's certain things where she would throw a tantrum. Okay, let's go to your chair, with your emotions and everything. And then I come back to her and then I'll kind of talk through that situation with her. Like, okay, what did we do wrong? What should have we not done? But that's just me trying to do the best I can to, raise her. But how do
you not like overcorrect the other way where you're like, now I'm.
Well, I think it's like, okay, so there are 3 typical parenting styles across cultures, across communities, across everybody. And then other than neglectful parenting, which obviously we would not be here if that was an issue. And so if you think back to your childhood and from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you both came from more authoritarian parents. So it's measured on 2 dimensions. One is sensitivity, which you can think of as relationship and connection and just like attunement. And the other is demandingness, which could also be called control or boundaries and limits. And you kind of so authoritarian is very high on control, demandingness, limits, but it's low on sensitivity. So that means like, what your rules are, but you're because I said so, and this is just how it's going to be. And it's a little fear-based. Like your kids aren't going to break your rules in front of you 1,000%. Because they don't want to get in trouble or spanked or whatever, or yelled at. But the problem with it is that those kids in high school tend to lie better than anybody, unless they're, right? Like they know how to not get in trouble.
Pregnant young. I was
there you
so
go.
Clueless.
Like it's like exactly the trajectory, and it worked out. But if you think about it, it makes sense because you wouldn't go to your parents probably to talk about all the things that would maybe make a different, whatever.
Right. That open communication was not there.
So if you up the sensitivity and you still have high expectations, but it's even. But it's like for the child that you have, for the values that you have, you're recognizing that you can still like be connected even if you're disappointing them. That's called authoritative, and that is the balanced approach, and it has the best outcomes. And then there's the other side, which is permissive, and it's so sensitive and loving, and I don't want to be like, my controlling parents, but I'm so uncomfortable seeing my child distressed at like a rule. I can't make rules, or I'm going to change them all the time to make sure that it's approved of by my best friend, my kid. And that
it's like the parents that were partying with the kids in high school and buying all the alcohol. And
did you see Mean Girls?
Yes, that's
like Tina, or it was Amy Poehler's character,
right?
So I think like it's well-meaning, but those are the same kids in high school that instead of they're telling their parents, they're not sharing with them. So that's a good thing. But what they're sharing is like, they have such higher rates of anxiety and what are called internalizing disorders, depression, things where you don't have a leader. You're just like, blind. I guess I'm in charge. And we are too little when we're young people to be in charge, even though we want to be. So again, when you put the balanced approach, which is I do have limits, I do have expectations, and it's sometimes going to be really hard because it's going to make you mad or sad, but I'm also going to be here to hug you when you're sad and mad. I'm not changing my rule, but I'm going to be there for you. And I think that's the balance that you can always go to. And I say this, the shorthand of that is all feelings are welcome, all behaviors are not. So did I honor the feeling? Was I like, you can feel mad. That is so reasonable. I'm not changing the fact that it's bedtime.
Got it. I love that.
And then you're kind of balanced.
Yeah.
And you just keep asking yourself, am I overcorrecting? How do I get back in that balance?
Okay. I love that. That's so good. I'm going to be using this.
I feel like I'm very high on the authoritative.
Yeah.
Because I'm very black and white. Okay, this is your punishment for not doing this. It is what it is. And someone seems to always change that punishment.
Sometimes I decide, well, does she have to be grounded?
Well,
I mean, I think
she doesn't do drugs.
She really learned her lesson. She's a good girl.
No, I think that happens too, is like we think to ourselves, and also punishment's funky because what you're talking about are consequences, I think, that sort of make sense to the crime. I think punishment, when it's arbitrary, like it doesn't have anything to do with what happened. Like you stay out past your curfew, it makes sense that you can't go out again for a couple times because
that was the one when you had to go pick her up.
Yeah, let's not. That was irritating, but I was also loving, and I talked to her about it too.
Yeah,
and you picked her up. It sounds like
I did.
We had a thing where she drove her car, she drank, and we know that happens, and. So I was happy that she called us to have her pick her up.
Well, her boyfriend called.
Yeah.
But
he's like,
besides the point.
Seething.
And so he's like, she wasn't going to drive. I was going to get her an Uber. And Anthony's like, no, I don't want her in an Uber by herself at night. Like
drunk.
No,
right. That feels like a bad idea.
So he's like, thank you so much. So he had to go pick her up. And you Ubered there because she had the car. You Ubered, picked her up. You had to drive her back. And
so we had
it was a learning lesson, but she honestly wasn't.
It was
in
a
trouble
nice
after.
talk, and we had told her if this situation does occur, just let us know. Yeah,
yes.
And if we would have approached that with a complete 180, yelling at her, taking everything away from her, then that trust in if I'm in a really bad situation, I can't rely on my parents because I'm just going to get
100%. That is why you have. To me, that story tells me. You have a close connected relationship, which protects her from the fact that the world is going to throw some messy stuff. And she now always knows when she gets in trouble, like she knows the call to make, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're like, but by the way, you're not going to that party next weekend. You still like lovingly picked her up. You showed up, and that is everything because the alternative is terrifying.
Or that she is feeling like she has to go in an Uber by herself because she doesn't want to tell us. And then
I think that it speaks so highly of your relationship that that's the go-to is like, I'm not going to like it, but I'm of course picking you up. Of course you're not psyched about it. It's exhausting. And also who wants your 17-year-old? You're like, what is happening here? But it's of course happening.
Yeah. So after that, that's when we were like, you wanted to take away. What did you want to do? Like take away her car for a week? And I was like, you know what? She was like not feeling great the next day. She's like, I never want to do that again. She was so remorseful. She's like, I feel so stupid.
But there still needs to be a consequence.
I know, but I was like, I feel like we went through the learning lesson already. She was already embarrassed. like, can we just move on?
Embarrassed that her dad had to pick her up at a party.
She was so embarrassed
and I was
about
in a
that.
hoodie, but
I feel like that happens more often than you realize.
Yeah, I think she's, but
yeah, I think either way, like it's fine. It worked out, but I understand like that there is a space to be like, I got you. I'm here. I love you. We could talk about this anytime. Obviously, for this week, we're making some changes.
Yeah,
you can use the car for things that have to happen, but not for extra.
Right. Like right now, she's not. Like she still knows. I'm like, you're not the driver that's going to drive your friends. So we used it as like a huge learning lesson. But I'd rather her do these things at home than when she's in college and in these other situations when we're not there.
Yeah.
So we're trying to let her make the mistakes in high school as much as possible.
Let her go through the motions and then, teach her along the way. But
yeah. And it's it's uncomfortable that like you made a mistake. Your parents had to bail you out. Now you can't drive to a party, but it's like tolerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have to, we need that.
Mm-hmm. How do you recommend parents not spoil their kids? Because I think that we went through this whole like awakening about this with Jaden, because when me and him first met, we were very paycheck to paycheck. You know, we have a whole story on our podcast about how we paid off all this debt. And we
came from families that didn't have much money.
Right.
And I'm one of 3 and you're one of 4. So there's a lot of kids, not much money. So you're not getting those things. You're not going on the vacation. Yeah, vacations. So a lot of what we got was because we saved money from a birthday and we did it ourselves. And so when we got to the point where we were making money and we have Jaden, who is 8, 9, we wanted to give her those experiences or those things that we didn't have. But I think we did it a little too much.
We got to a point where like, I think she might be expecting things that we never expected at that age. Yeah. And how can we expect her to? She didn't go through any struggle of that age range. I feel like we're really aware with Elliot and Poppy now, like, I don't want to overspend and buy tons of things on Christmas just because we can.
Yeah.
I want to make it to where they think, okay, I got things I wanted and it was fun, but I wasn't like,
I get
everything I want. Right. And I feel like with Jaden, if she wants me, I'm like, oh, I want to surprise her and get it for her on Friday. And I was so excited to do that because the past years I didn't. So we're trying to figure out that balance of like, how do we do it with Elliot and Poppy to make sure, and with Jaden even, you know, she has her own money now. She has to buy things she wants. Like we have.
So how does she have her own money?
She does social media. She works with brands. She works.
Okay. So she's not, I mean, right there is an indicator that she is not so spoiled because she's aware that if she wants to spend, she needs to make money and have a job. So I feel like that having chores is hugely important.
Mm-hmm. She has to wash the dishes every
night.
You can
start at age 5 with chores.
Okay.
You know, it's going to be good timing.
Yeah, because even with Poppy with the play, I'm like, hey, let's clean up some of the toys. And we don't really have that many in there. And she is like, well, it's going to be too tough.
Right. So, okay. Like, so you put all the blue toys in the bin, you know, but like make sure that take it, you know, in baby steps, but make sure that, you know, she still has responsibilities. Or like she can walk her plate to the sink. She can't necessarily wash the dishes for another couple years, but she can definitely, actually she
does help me with, she helps me with dinner. I'll say, okay, you're going to start this, you're going to measure this. She'll help me with things. I mean, it's not like she's helping a ton, but I'm giving her little things, but it's more because in those instances she wants to. It's not like I'm asking her to.
Yeah,
she's like,
well, usually with younger kids, chores are fun because it's like a job. It's Montessori schools are fully based on, you know, practical life chores, essentially. Like pouring water for everybody can take one of the kids like 20 minutes, and it helps the whole group. But it's also teaching fine motor skills and community and all those things. So I actually think you can start that really early, and it teaches just responsibility to others. You're probably not going to raise kids if you have, it's hard to get kids to be hustly and like really.
Especially if they haven't experienced a struggle, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you create a struggle that's fake?
So the only thing that you can do is like, when they turn 16, you don't just like put a bow on a car. And when they, I'm not saying that is what you have to do. I'm just saying like those moments.
I'm saying we did.
No, but that's okay.
No,
because
but she was 17, but it was kind of like a family car
too.
So.
But you might also say like, okay, but you're responsible for gas.
Yeah, she is. And insurance.
There you go. So like you guys are doing it. You just can't, you know, like, you, based on your childhoods, can't fathom what she has. But she also, there are levels of this because there are kids who a car appears, gas appears, dishes get washed, jobs are not even a thought. You know, those kinds of things, they're small, but they are helpful.
Yeah. And she did overspend 1 month, ran out of money. And she's like, oh, can you just like forward me because I'm getting paid in 10 days. I'm like, no. That's called debt. That's what you do on a credit card. Like, that's not, you don't just get a forwarded a payment. Like, I'm not going to give you money and then, you know, they're going to pay me. She's like, wait, what? So I'm like,
extra cash.
Yeah, that's not what we're doing here. So I think she felt that with like, oh, I need to make sure I'm budgeting each month because if I run out of my money, I can go out to my friends with dinner.
That is the thing. So like, you're not like, we can't go on vacation, but you're definitely like, you're learning slowly how to be an autonomous adult. You're still a kid, so you're getting a lot, but you're still realizing the extras are coming from you. I feel like that's...
What about for Elliot and Poppy's age?
I think for them, it's like when you go into a store to buy a birthday present for another kid and they want something and they're going to tantrum over it, be okay with that.
Yeah.
And say, like, write that down for your birthday list or your half birthday or Christmas. Like, keep occasions.
That's so good.
You know, now there are a lot of people that are like, I don't even do presents during these times. I do experiences. I think that too is like another version, but it's so privileged that it's like, you have to decide, you know, what
and are the kids loving the experience as much as the parents do? It's like,
I think that is it's an interesting thing to do, maybe school-aged kids, you know, like you go to Harry Potter World. Yeah, like something they've been really looking forward to, or
Poppy
tickets to a game.
Like,
she doesn't know.
Yeah.
But she also doesn't really appreciate presents for more than 5 minutes either. So you can wrap like scarves.
Little things.
You know, it's more, so it's like not getting everything you want when you want it, even if you can provide it. I think that's on us.
I love that.
And chores.
Okay.
And then eventually a summer job or a school year job or the things that are happening.
Do you think kids should get paid for chores? Or do you think
they're just
like no allowance, right?
They can get an allowance separately.
But they're earning
it's
the
part
allowance.
of the family, you know.
You're just your family,
right.
like you are part of this community. And before you're in the larger community, you're in this household community. So like you're not getting money for doing the dishes. You're doing the dishes because that's your contribution to the household.
I love that.
Separately, you might say, and I'm giving you X number of dollars a week for you to budget and give, save, and spend, or, you know, however you want to do it. But that's contingent upon nothing. Like that's just me or us as your parents saying, like, I want you to learn how to budget your money. You're going to want to go to the movies with your friends. You're going to want to think about, like, how do I want to save this? I want to get a manicure. I don't know, whatever the things are. So that's your allowance, is for the extras that I'm giving you or we're giving you. But it's not with chores. Chores have to be, that's part of being a member of a community.
What is the balanced way of chores? Because me and Anthony will tell her, you know, when we were younger, we did chores all weekend. We were picking weeds, like both of him. And she's
mowing,
like, okay.
Taking out the trash, painting fences.
But like our upbringings are so much different than hers. And she's like, okay,
like,
well, do you want me to do yard work? But no, I'm like, no, I don't want you out there. Like, you don't even know what you're doing.
Right.
Like, I don't want you messing up the yard.
Like it's not contributing.
Yeah, this is not helping us at all.
So annoying. I think you can just decide on things that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Organizing, something like, cleaning out the fridge.
Yeah, just things that have to get done every day that you should not be doing.
She's in charge of all her laundry. So we don't do any of her laundry.
So that's a chore.
Yeah. And she has to clean her room. I'm trying to think of the other things. She has to wash her car and vacuum it.
No.
Well, she hasn't been doing it lately. The car's a mess.
Yeah, but we've been driving it a lot too.
Yeah, and that's on us. I don't know. Well, who knows?
See, I'm like, oh, poor thing. She's doing the best.
Well, she washed
like she's
it
doing
2 months ago. And
well, you know, it's like, I guess you could say, I mean, I do that too. My daughter uses my car a lot of the time because I work from home, and she'll take my car, and I'm like, we have different phone chargers. This is so stupid. But I'm like, if that phone charger is not replaced with my phone charger when you get out, and there is a coffee sitting there or something, you're not using my car for the rest of the week. And she's like, no problem. And then she does it. And of course, I'm like, next time.
Yeah, you're like, next time I'll definitely enforce this.
And it's just so annoying because it's stupid stuff. But I'm just like, don't be thoughtless.
Yeah.
Like, what's the real worry? And I think that's what we have to always go back to is the rule because there's a bigger issue that we're worried about? Or is the rule just like, you have to keep the gas in the car because if I get in the car and it's not filled with gas.
That's such a pet peeve.
Yeah. Like that is not okay. Whereas the charger and that stuff, I think pulls at a thread for me of like, are you going to be thoughtless?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to grow into a thoughtless person?
My biggest thing is laziness. So I'm like, if she didn't take the next step, like a little bit of like an extra effort, like being proactive, I don't know what, it just like bugs me so much. That's part of the reflection thing of our parenting is like, what is pulling at a thread for me and why? And what matters in the big picture
for them to develop that skill that is important to me. And it's also our values. Like as a family, you might say, I think it's so cool. You might have done this to have a family values statement or a family mission statement. And just sort of say like, in this household, these 4 things are the most important to us. So that your kids kind of know like when push comes to shove, yeah, they didn't do this, that, or the other. But like for the big stuff that really, really matters, they would not cross that, you know, because it's like that is our core. And you can also ask them, like, what do you have as your personal, because we can have personal value statements too that aren't necessarily aligned with our family, but they're like for our own goals, especially going off to college. But our core values as a family, like those things really matter. And to me, all the discipline stuff goes into the category of like, either I'm teaching you how to be a functioning member of society that people want to be around. Like you're thoughtful, you're conscientious, you're helpful, or this is necessary for values to be upheld in this household. And then if it's anything else, I like don't care at all.
Can you give me an example of what a mission statement would look like for someone who's trying to write it at home?
Okay.
We have one for our business, but I have heard of our church is actually doing a weekend for parents where you sit and do the mission statement. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, making a family mission statement. But the person who's writing it said that they had it printed on their wall in a big, cool frame. Yeah. And so when they walk by, they're like, that's my family's mission statement. I love that. But
like it could be, you know, in this house, we value, just name something off the top of your head that you like think is deep value. And you don't have to be married to this. You guys can change it over time.
Integrity.
Okay. So in this households, we value integrity,
trust,
humility, proactiveness, non-laziness,
and not being a sloth,
and perfection.
Imagine
it's just
high goals you'll never achieve.
To be perfect.
They're walking by it feeling defeated every day. They're like, God.
Right.
This is where you're constantly at.
Right. That's also something to think about is like, because values go in different categories, like kindness is a value, but you also might say education is a value. And you also might say hard work is a value. And you also might say humor is a value. Like you might say God is a value. There's so many things. So it's like, but what is like really important to you? We're not going to come up with it today.
Yeah. You just have to, your 4 pillars, you would say.
Yeah. And you and you think to yourself, if someone passes by that sign, will they feel inspired or defeated?
Love that.
Because you don't want your kids walking by and thinking, I can't ever live up to this. So it has to be not so much aspirational, but actually like real. Practical. Like what are our practical lived values? Not our like, and I think another fun way to find out is if you guys come up with your value statement and then you ask just your older daughter, because the littles are too little, they'll be like ice cream and but if you said to her, so what do you think our value statement says? What would you say the 4 things are? If they are like in complete, like they do not match at all, then you get to ask yourselves like, how real are these? Are these like pie in the sky, not how we actually live, but just like what we want? Or are they rooted in how we're raising our kids? And then you decide, are we going to change how we raise our kids to match these values? Or are we going to shift our statement to be more real to who we've been this whole time?
I see. I love that. So inspired to do a mission. Let's do it over Christmas break. We're going to sit together. Good. The 3 of us, Jade and me and you.
She's like, I'll raise these kids as well.
She's like, let me write it for you.
I really think it's fun when teenagers are like, yeah, that's not a value in this house.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that with just like health and wellness, I know that little things she's saying, I know that they're making an impact because she'll say different things. She's like, I know you told me this. And I'm like, okay, so they're not going in one ear out the other. But because we're also modeling it, we're not just talking about it all the time. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm, doing my weights. Or she sees me in the morning, doing the things that I'm talking about.
It's a lot more effective.
So she's like, oh, what program is that? Or like, what supplement are you taking? But it's like, because I'm actually in the middle of like, oh, can you go grab it for me? I need to take it. But I think that has been something that's been, it's like as much as I want to tell her things, it's only when
you got to,
right.
It's true. You have to be able to live by them or you have to be able to acknowledge like, I'm not good at this yet, but it is something I'm working on and I really want this for you. But I will also tell you that the adolescent brain hears much more than they let on. It just sometimes we don't see the outcome for like a decade or so.
That's so true.
So, it's like you hear the voice of your parents in your head, and you have to decide if it's a voice that you think is a healthy voice.
Right.
But you hear it, like even if you never acknowledged it back in the day, it's not gone. You know what it is, and you decide like, what am I doing with this voice? Is this a voice that is carrying me and like inspiring me, or is this a voice that I'm trying to get out of my head?
What advice would you have for Jaden's age who is going off to college?
This is the time to try everything that you're curious about that is within safety and values, so that you can decide who you are. Because a lot of kids right now, especially teenagers that are about to go to college, have had to decide who they are in order to get into college.
Right. Even their letter or the
they have to
essay they have to write is all about who
like,
you are.
Who you are. And I'm like, how the hell do they know who they are? They're just developing.
Right.
So their certainty is beautiful in some ways, but it's also like, I want them to know nobody knew who they were when they were 18. That's ridiculous. I didn't know who I was. I just found out who I was. It's going to be deep into your 20s at least. So to just be aware of that, and also to be aware that you're not supposed to be happy every day. You're supposed to be happy at least once a day for a moment. And I think the expectation when you go off into the world is that if you're not like, if this isn't the best time in your life and this wasn't the coolest experience and you're not making the most friends, that's because there's something wrong with you. And I really want our emerging adults to know that, and I think that's why it's good to, in front of them, like not be perfect. I want them to, you're like, I am unfortunately
I'm
perfect.
trying not to be perfect, that's in its own.
Like, let me lower my standard.
Oh boy, I got to fail a little bit more.
But you could be conscientious, but that or that you can have a hard day and that you bounce back from it versus like, no, everything's fine. It's always fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the thought that our kids are going to go into the world thinking this is a deficit on my end if I'm not appreciative and grateful and happy all the time.
Right.
Adulthood isn't working for me. They're still developing. So I think that I just want them to know that. And then also to, I think, have a value statement that they can keep going to so that when the challenges come up and you're not there, they know what their North Star is for what they really want.
So important. Having that and being able to make a decision and being confident in your decision, not saying, let me call my mom because I'm too unconfident to move forward with this on my own.
But if you have your value statement and you're like, okay, I'm trying to figure out if I should take this job, go to this party, talk to this person, do whatever. Let me look at how does this align with what my value statement, my personal value statement, which can change every year. It's not like you never get to evolve, but this year I really wanted to focus on these things. Is this going to help me be true to that, or is this going to take me away from it?
I love that. That's something I use when thinking about what events to do at night. And I used to say yes to a lot of things because I didn't have Elliot and Poppy at home and Jaden was in school. And now I'm very selective because if I have to say yes to something, then I'm missing bedtime and I'm missing their routine. So I have to be very mindful about that. And that, I think, goes back to the pillars of what we were saying of focusing our time with the family, the 4 growth areas that we have for ourselves. And that, not that that's our mission statement, but I do need to tweak it to where we have an actual mission statement, but we use that with deciding time commitments. Is like, does this go into our goals? But it's not like a
but I think
statement.
your goals probably are somewhat aligned with your values. So you can probably pull from that.
Yeah,
but it's true. And it helps her. That's the kind of thing that can help her too. Like, if she is going off to college and there is, 4 nights of activities, but she really wants to do well in school and she wants to have a great social life, how can she make those decisions? How best can she make them? Who are the people that she wants to spend the most time with? All those things.
Because we like to tell her a lot, the 5 people that you spend your time with, you become, or you have these, you can either be encouraged by
influenced by them.
Certainly influenced, whether people want to admit it or not. And I even say that about social media. Whoever you're constantly scrolling and looking at, that's also a way of influence. So you really have to be careful of like the people you're really deep diving into if that's not someone you would want to be investing time in, real life in. So I do tell her, I'm like, make sure, you choose your friends wisely, because just because if they're convenience, they're there, but they're not really good friends, or they're gossiping all the time. Like, are these people that you want to be hanging out with 24/7?
Right. So and I mean, if she is going away?
Yes. So we don't know yet where, but she applied to all different out-of-state schools.
So then also, this is like very practical advice, but like make a morning habit. Just make a morning routine for yourself. Because
are you listening, Jaden? Please take her advice, because I've been telling her that for the last year.
No, and even if it's like 3 things that you just do in the morning, like you wash your face, you brush your teeth, and you make your bed. Like, it doesn't matter, but it's the repetition that there is something certain about your day, that you're getting into good, healthy habits. I would like to bribe my daughter, of course, to like exercise and eat right and get sleep.
Eat breakfast before. That's always my biggest thing. I'm like, you need to fuel your brain.
And those kinds of things, like, I feel like it's the small habits that they can make commitments to that we can just be grateful for. If they can, on every Sunday, write down 3 things that they just really appreciate about their day or their week, I'm happy. Like, it's the small things that add up and the morning habits, but it's so like good. Not to take on too much. Like, would I like to say, please make sure you get outside an hour a day. Please make sure you get 8 hours of sleep every day. Please make sure you eat blah, blah, blah. But like, that's too much.
Too overwhelming for them.
So I think it's just like letting them know how big it is to even just commit to doing the same 3 things every morning.
My thing right now for her that we're like, go outside right when you wake up, get your eye, look at the sun. She's like, Mom, I don't have time to do that right now. I'm like, it's going to set your circadian rhythm. I'm like, just do that. It's so easy. You just go outside.
It's just information over. There's so much that we can do to be
I'm
healthier.
Like, just go outside and sit with me. And she's like, I have to get ready for school.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting out there in the front yard. I'm like, I'm like, don't you want to look at the sun? Because she has to take the dogs on the walk before school. So she's already doing
another
that.
chore.
She is doing that.
Guys, it's still a habit. It's still helpful. They're still able to pee.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm just, because what I do think about is when she goes to school, and it is overwhelming. You have a lot of activities. People are coming in your room, especially she's going to be living in the dorms.
Environment.
Yeah.
You're excited about all this stuff. You're not prioritizing sleep. So I'm telling her, get in your routine now. So when you go to college, you're not like dragging, or you hear these girls that are just having like a struggle time because they're not eating right, they're not sleeping, and they're exhausted. And you're just trying to like be a part of all the activities.
Big risky time for mental health challenges.
1000%. I think also too because like the food they're eating is just like the cafeteria food is.
Well, there's nothing more predictive of a decline in mental health than lack of sleep, lack of exercise, and lack of good food. Like, of course, it's going to go badly. So, but you also can't.
And the big change of being homesick and all that too. Yeah. So we're prepping her as much as we can now. I think I think it's going to be weird just not having her in her room.
Of course, I can't even think about it.
I know.
I'm like,
it's so strange.
I'm all talk because I tell I work with people all the time. I'm like, let them fly free. And then I say to my daughter at least once a day, I'm like, so I was also thinking about, like, I'm so crazy. But
I like to go in her room and be like, Jay, what do you think about this? And she'll be like, oh yeah, like I just like to go in there and like chit chat with her. And she's like, Mom, I'm on a call, or Mom, I'm studying. I'm like, oops, okay, sorry, I'll come back later.
It's so desperate and needy that I have the same thing. Like, we're just like that. Tina Fey does that thing of the, like it's like the office worker that you have a crush on, and you're just like,
yes, like, hey, hi, I'm here again.
Be eating dinner soon, and if you want to come. But it's so true, and it's just something that you have to adapt to.
I really enjoy having a teenager, like you said earlier. Like, just this time is really fun, seeing her blossom into her own woman. I'm like, okay, you're gonna live your life, and it's just another chapter that we're able to go and hang out with her and be that friend and not be so stressed about like, well, she doesn't take my advice, whatever.
Like the everyday, not picking out what she didn't do or what she has done.
Yeah.
It's just it'll be not refreshing. It's going to be definitely a big change, and the dynamic, and Poppy and Elliot, especially Poppy, we're kind of worried about.
She's going to be real sad.
She's in her room all the time. She's like, is Jay home? She's like, I missed her. Where was she today? I'm like, she was at school. She's like, oh, I missed her.
She's going to be sad.
Like, wait
it's
till
going
she goes
to be,
to college.
I know. But what's cool about it is, it's those small stressors that our kids experience over and over in the presence of loving caregivers that build resilience. And so that's going to be one of those, what's called a positive stressor or a tolerable stressor. Those are stressors that like stretch you in a very uncomfortable way. But if you have great, like not even great, just a loving parent.
And just saying, we're going to go see Jaden soon.
You don't even have to
you
comfort.
Just nothing.
You can just be loving and just say like, that it is really hard when your big sister goes off to college. You miss her.
Like, I miss her too.
Yeah. And like, you don't have to solve it because you can't. Because the truth is,
I can't.
It's really sad.
I know. I'm like, I'm struggling too, Poppy. You want to cry together?
You're like, do you want to? Yeah.
I'll be in the room.
My daughter, my younger daughter was, we did college decisions a little bit early. And my younger daughter was walking to the car the other day and she like just started tearing up and she was like, I'm just realizing that she's going to be away next year. Oh, no. And I was like, instead of make her feel better, well done.
You're like, I'm done.
Like, I know.
I'm crying.
And
that would be me.
I definitely make a lot of parenting mistakes on repeat and I watch them. Like I could watch them and judge them, but I'm just like, I guess that was one of those moments.
Yeah, it's one of those like heartfelt things where like you really think about them not being there. It just seems so far off because we have another year. She'll be
I know it is far off. But
so I'm like, oh, it'll be next fall. But I'm like, it's gonna come quicker than we know it. And that's like end of an era for me. Like hopefully she won't be living back home afterwards.
Isn't that the truth?
Knock on
You're
wood.
like, I hope she doesn't live back at home, but
I'm
also do you need to come here?
Right. I'm like, do you
could save a lot of money.
There'll be a room here.
Yeah. We will keep this room exactly as is. No, it's one of those, it's.
But a lot of kids move back home, especially during the COVID lockdown. Like a lot of kids moved back home. There's a lot of colleges were shut down. So in that sense, it's like, yeah, they're going to move back in.
I mean, she's going to come back during summer.
She will be back home at some point. Yeah, that's
so we
right.
Can't completely get rid of her.
I'm like, oh, I can't change it up. No.
No, I know, but it's still just, it's top of mind. It's like, but it's also the beginning of a cool relationship for you guys because we spend their whole childhood, we are not their friends. We cannot be their friends because it's terribly unhealthy. Yeah. Even though they might think of us as their friends, we're not. And it's not reciprocal. We're not like, let me tell you about my hard day and you tell me how I can feel better. But when they become adults, your relationship shifts and you can have like a much more enjoyable time. You don't have to teach lessons all the time.
Right.
It's kind of nice.
I know. I love that.
That's what I'm telling myself.
I know. And I think that's why we're having a hard time with this because the little ones, because they're so close to her right now. So it's not like I have all teenagers that are all going away at the same time. And we want to have more kids. So I'm like, I know. And I'm like,
fabulous.
Yeah. I'm like, how sad for the other little one. Like, are they not going to really know Jaden that much?
Not in the same way.
Not in the same way. So that makes me sad too. But Jaden is just so protective of them. She's like, I feel like they're like, I'm so like motherly to them because she's not fighting with them like a sibling. Although Poppy sometimes will be like, she's sometimes mean to Jaden.
They'll bicker back
and she'll be like, Jay, give me back that thing. Or, they sometimes, I'm like, Jay, she's 3, chill. Like, but she'll take her to the park. She'll be like, can I go take her to the mall? I'm going to walk around with her. I'm like, sure. Do not, she knows not to like take her eyes off her.
Of course.
But she's so cute with her. She's
babysat starting at like 12.
I know.
She's fine. Yeah. It just changes.
Yeah. Parents who are struggling with guilt or shame, how do you manage that? And I guess excluding the fact if you're being abusive to your kids, like that, you should be.
We're not.
That's like a whole
addressing
different thing,
that.
right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about if you're feeling guilt. Like I know mom guilt is a big thing where you feel like I should be doing this. And for me, I even feel it with sometimes when I'm working or I'm filming the podcast right now, and like I feel like I should be at home with my kids. So I had that internal struggle too. I am home with my kids a lot more than I was at my corporate job. How do you manage that?
I think that they will never, you could stay at home 24 hours a day and be in their face. With younger kids, they'll always want more, whether you're working full-time, part-time, or never.
And I think, and also too, if you're not saying like if you are staying at home with your kids, you're 100% tuned in too. You could be watching screens all day too.
I would be the worst mother if I stayed at home because I would just like zone out. Everyone has different capacities and we have to sort of match our capacity with also like our circumstances. But in terms of the research, the mom's mental health is the most important. So maternal mental health is what matters. If your mental health is better when you're working or taking a break, your kids' outcomes are better. So you always need to sort of, that saying, put your oxygen mask on first. It's also true for dads, but like not as much.
Like, sorry.
So I can go crazy.
You can go crazy. You just need, well, it's not even that. If she went crazy, you would need to really.
I would need to
not go crazy. The saying, put your oxygen mask on first, is really very real. And if you feel guilty because part of putting your oxygen mask on is to do work or to do something outside of being with your kids, then it's a matter of self-compassion. You are just, hand on heart, take a deep breath and remind yourself, like, this is who I am and what I am. And that is exactly what my child needs.
So the thing is for me is I feel more restorative, and I know it from my Aura ring when I'm with my kids than when I'm working. So,
well, that is also true. That doesn't mean that you should quit working. It just means that you're filled
I get
when you're with your kids.
I get re-energized, or I'm more of like, okay, I'm ready for the next day as long as
I guess the question is, like, for me, I'm definitely happier with my kids than without my kids. But would I be that way if I never worked? I don't know. I might be like, I didn't get a break, but I don't know, because that's not a life I've lived. I've lived a different kind of life. So I think it's just, we have to be super self-compassionate, because also, if you remember, and this I think goes to the shame and guilt part, and guilt we need, like a little guilt is a moral rudder. I think that's so
true.
I don't know why people are like anti-guilt. You should feel guilty. You do something shitty, you should.
No, it's
Excuse
true.
my language.
Like, you shouldn't just be like, oh, it's okay.
Oh, I'm so good to myself. I'm not going to let myself feel guilty. Feel guilty, because otherwise you'll do it again.
Is that the whole thing of the toxic positivity, where you're telling yourself you're doing the best, but you really aren't?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know. It's also like making everything into a positive when it's not.
Right.
And also giving yourself permission to just be a jerk, not super awesome. But that's different. Shame is calling into question your value and worthiness as a human. Like, that's different. Like, I did that. I'm a bad person because, versus my behavior was unkind or bad or whatever. That's one is behavior. You can feel guilty about bad behavior, but one is about calling into question your worthiness, which is ridiculous. So in those cases, like, what I hope for everyone is to just like remind yourself, of course you're worthy. Like, and you are exactly who your child needs. Like, there is no better person to be the parent to your child than you guys. So
I love that.
Reminding yourself of that. And like the last thing, just inspirationally, or maybe this makes people feel worse. I'm not sure. I think the voice in your head that is vicious, that like makes you feel unworthy, think of that voice as the voice your child will hear as they grow up in their head, and change that voice to the voice you want your child to hear. Because even though we don't say it out loud, our guilt and shame is in our nervous system to be caught by our kids. Like, they catch our nervous system. Nervous systems are contagious. So like, if you walk into a room and people are laughing, you don't even know what the joke is, but you kind of laugh.
Yeah.
If people are sad, you kind of are like, oh my God, what's going on?
Right.
And you can know nothing except for feel the air in the room. So if you have trouble being kind and compassionate to yourself in your head, practice it for dear life as if it's the voice your kids are going to be using.
I love that. That's so good. I think one thing we've really been good about is making sure our kids feel an air of patience and calmness. It's like they spill something, it's like, okay. I feel like it was very much like high strung in my household. And so it's like I do carry some of that.
The stakes are high for silly things.
For silly things, right? And you're always like on eggshells a little bit. And so I'm trying as much as I can not to be like that with my kids. But it's like sometimes I revert back to like, am I being too chill about things?
I don't think you're ever too chill about things. I think if you're chill about things that don't matter to you, that's a good thing.
True. Just keeping it with the value system.
Keep it with your values. And I doubt you'd be chill if something
that's so true.
went against your values.
But
everything else,
things.
be chill. That's great.
Yeah, I feel like we were pretty good on. I always think my reaction, say she spills something or gets something completely messed up, is my reaction going to really give her a negative experience that kind of overlooks what's just happened?
Right.
Like, is it really worth it?
Like mistakes happen.
Yeah. And just having that, I guess, not quick reactions, just, Poppy, oh, don't do that. Or,
Yeah, I mean, she was carrying glass recently, and I always let him use the glass cups at dinner.
Yeah.
And she dropped it. It shattered. And I'm like, okay, I figured that would probably happen eventually. But now she is very careful. She's like, it's glass. It's going to break. I'm like, see, you saw it break last time.
The snow globe, she loved it, and she just got it. And she was washing her hands, and so she put it on the counter, and I was like, okay, Poppy, just make sure you watch the snow globe. And I literally turned the corner, and just all over. I'm like, oh. And she was really sad, but like, okay, well, we just clean it up. It's okay.
Just don't want you to get hurt. Yeah.
Wash the glass, but
sometimes I'm like, okay, that was dumb. I probably shouldn't have given her the glass.
No, I think that
right?
I think
like we knew it was going to happen.
They do have shatterproof glasses.
I know. I'm like, wow, I could have thought that one through more.
But I think as long as it's within the, as long as they're safe and they're not like stepping on the glass, like she learned how to. Like, oh, I have to calibrate. Like when I'm carrying glass, I have to walk a little slower.
I could talk to you all day. You have such good tips.
I have great tips, which doesn't mean I can do them myself, but I'm so good at telling other people about them.
I always tell her hindsight is 20/20, and she says, "Why do you always say that?" Because when you look
you'll find out later.
Yeah, one day you'll say it too.
I don't get it.
Just trust me.
But I can just tell, like, just that you care about the connection.
That's, I think, so important. And having I feel like kids really do want just the time with you. Is just the playing on the ground together, especially our little ones. Jay, sometimes she's doing her own thing.
Yeah, she doesn't want to play as much.
Yeah, sometimes she's like, do I have to go to the park with you guys? But Poppy's so happy. I'm like, I'll play the kitchen with you for a little bit. And she's like, all right.
Isn't that funny? I mean, at the younger kids, there's like not enough time to give them. They want so much. And then they...
And I think it's nice, too, that we got to see Jade and see where that kind of leads to.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we only have so much time as Poppy being the age she is, as Elliot, and really kind of soaking that up. And
yes.
It kind of gives you a perspective.
We were taking a walk, and some older couple walked by us, and they were so sweet. They're like, oh, and it was just the two little ones. They're like, just wait till they're teenagers. And we're like, oh, can't wait. But we were like, we already know.
I love teenagers so much, as you know, but I remember people saying that. And I was just like, I don't know. I feel like they get a bad rap because I studied adolescence before I started learning about younger kids. And I did all of that before I had kids, which is weird in retrospect. It was theoretical to me. But I'm like, teenagers are just so cool. Even though there are times when I just start laughing because I'm like, I cannot believe how rude sometimes. There are just like moments where I'm like, if I didn't know, if I couldn't like pull back and think like, oh, that's developmentally appropriate what's happening right now in my head, I probably would lose my temper all day. Yeah. Because like little tiny things happen where it's like, I have a friend who said to me, well, my daughter just told me she hates how I chew. And I just laughed so hard because I was like, that is so right. Like they're supposed to start noticing things about you that aren't so amazing.
Yeah.
Even though they don't need to tell you, but they will. Mm-hmm. But for me, because it's not that I like don't get set off, but I definitely am not as kind of offended. I don't take things as personally. Like I'm just like.
That's just like going through the age.
Yeah.
I love that approach to it too, because it like lets them go through the development without them feeling like, oh, you should be acting like an adult. Like they're not adults. They're literally, their frontal lobe is not fully developed.
Exactly.
And it's like, you have to remember that.
And I think if you meet them where they are in like this state of, like if they say something snippy that's not relevant, you're not teaching them about like being respectful. Like they know all of that. It's just a moment. I feel like if you meet them where they are and turn it into a fight, it so undermines you. But if you just laugh because you're like, that's so charming, like it just like, you're done.
You just like lets it roll off.
Yeah. Now, if they're walking through the world and they're just like, I'm going to just crap on everyone and say whatever I want, you obviously have to shift. But if it's just that, the morning snippiness or something, it's like, who cares? You have to have that moment. And it's they have to push us away and then come back to us over and over because that's part of their adolescence.
I love that. That's so good.
I have to just remember it.
I know. And I'm really trying to, sometimes you'll be like, she's having an attitude with me. I'm like, she just woke up. Like, let her chill. Like, he's like,
we're both.
And he's like up so early, ready to go. He got his workout in. He's all,
good morning, Jade.
He's all, hi, Jade. She's like,
what's with the attitude?
By the way, this is every morning with teenagers because also their brains they are supposed to sleep in later.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a bummer because they can't because of school, but it's actually not natural to them to get up early. It will become natural. So in the morning, I'm also like, I'm up so much earlier than they are. And then I'm like, morning, and so annoying.
He's
and
like,
both of my kids are like,
like, don't start yet.
Totally. Can you just like turn the volume down?
Like 2 cups in. And
Yeah,
like, today's going to be a great day, Jaden.
But then at night, she's like slamming doors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, we're all trying
like
to go
all
to sleep.
passed out.
Yeah. So we have that. But it's just like, you know what? Developmental.
Have you ever, sometimes my daughters, they want to talk about everything right as my eyes are closing. And I'm always like, I'm definitely going to fall asleep while you're telling me something important.
Yes.
And I do. So often I'm like, because I get up so early, I fall asleep so early. And once my daughter was like, did you just actually fall asleep while I was telling you a story?
It'd be more interesting.
That's what I should have said.
Use some hand movements. I don't know.
I'm like,
You're like,
tell
I'm
me
just
more
hanging
about your
on.
friend's friend.
It's like the most random story. You're like, okay, I don't know who you're talking about, what girl that was.
Yeah.
So many degrees of separation.
So many degrees of separation that I'm like,
No, I tell her, I'm like, Jay, it's because my circadian rhythm is set. I'm sorry, I can't undo it.
But hers will catch up in 20 years.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. It's so refreshing to hear that other parents are going through the same teenager, the good and the bad, all the fun in between too.
I think
I think it's
all
fun.
everybody's unique, of course, and temperaments are unique, but development is not unique. Which is so
nice.
When people have young children and they're so excited, and they're telling me about something so special, like first steps or first words or first, time that they said pick you up instead of they don't know how to say pick me up, all the things. I love hearing about them, but I also have to bite my tongue to not be like, yeah, that's
normal.
Exactly normal, because nobody likes to hear, you want to hear things are normal if you're worried about something being a problem. But otherwise you want to hear that there's this unique being unlike any other in the world. And but they are, and also development is fairly, there's a range, but it's certainly
that's why I don't like saying okay, what time are they supposed to walk by? What time are they supposed to crawl?
It's just that they do.
Right. Yeah. That they're not still crawling at 3 years old. And
right.
You're like, okay, something we need to probably look at.
That's why I think it's good to know the sort of range, but I hate anybody, not a person, but any books or whatever messages that are by this date
puts a lot of stress
age,
on
this
you.
should happen, because humans don't work that way.
Right. And how you were saying, if you looked up the different things Poppy's doing, she's either really smart on one spectrum, or she's has some other
crazy
thing on
lady.
another spectrum.
Yeah,
you can go on both depending on what you're reading.
They're healthy. They're loved.
Yeah.
There for them.
Her gut health is good.
Gut health is good.
Do you guys really like gut health?
Yeah, we had our toddler tested because she was on a round of antibiotics.
Oh.
So before I had realized that antibiotics completely wipe everything, she was on 2 rounds, and they were just in case antibiotics. And so it's so good now. I changed how she eats, making sure she's getting probiotics, a lot of good food. But that was kind of with our whole our wellness journey, was just discovering these little things and then kind of changing the way what we're doing at home, our habits, and trying to do that with our kids too. But I do think it's helped her really, she's so focused. She plays really well.
She doesn't really melt down that much unless she's tired or really hungry.
I do notice if it's lack of sleep. If she misses her nap, it's
Who doesn't?
Clearly.
Yeah.
Sleep is very important to us to make sure she has a good nap. But I feel sometimes too, when she sleeps in our bed and we have her go to bed a little bit later, the next morning I'm she's going to be more just breaking down about little things because she's exhausted.
Yeah.
So I'm it doesn't really help her to sleep in our bed. It's more of just because I want to cuddle her.
It's so cute. But yes, sleep can change everything.
Mm-hmm. What is one piece of advice for someone who maybe is pregnant right now, excited about having kids, but just feels overwhelmed with all the to-dos, not to-dos, reading all the books, the new parent?
I think kind of reflecting on what your experience being parented was and figuring out what do I want to draw from that and what do I want to dump, and committing to the importance of your own care so that you can care for your child, your baby, and having appropriate expectations. Like, we can predict pretty well certain parts of postpartum depression from knowing what expectations somebody has combined with their mental health history, obviously. And I think knowing that you're not going to get as much sleep, kids are going to cry, things are going to be harder, is a little bit more realistic than this is so blissful, it's going to be the most beautiful thing in the world, even though in hindsight, all of us as parents of kids who are born and we're past the newborn stage, that was so delicious.
They
smell so good, and they're such little mush balls, and they can't push you away when you want to cuddle, and there's many benefits.
Yeah.
But I think, still managing your expectations and figuring out the ways to care for yourself while you're caring for your baby.
I love that.
And then if I could get everybody to ignore anybody who sounds religious about their parenting, meaning that there's one approach, and especially when it comes to newborn feeding and sleep, it drives me crazy because it's not remotely associated with attachment. And attachment is a really important concept in developmental science, like having a secure attachment relationship with your baby and your children. And sometimes people say, if you do this kind of sleep or feeding, you will have a better attachment relationship with your baby. And that is not true. It is so harmful to moms and dads who think, if I don't do exactly this, it's going to mess with my kid. So those are called procedural events, like how you potty train, how you sleep, how you eat. It's procedural stuff. It's not remotely related to how your relationship will be with your child. And so I just want people to separate those so that they don't get trapped in the I have to do it exactly this way. Do it that way if you like it.
Yeah. What would you say would be the ideal way if that you could? I'm give me a tip.
Is there one way?
Because when I was in the hospital with Elliot, I had this weird thing that some nurse was going to come in that wasn't actually working there.
Oh God!
I watched a Lifetime show right before I went into labor that was about a real story like that in the 80s.
Don't do that.
Yes,
if you're having a
don't
baby.
do that, guys. So when I went into labor, I had that in my head. So I was I don't want him leaving the room. And now they're all tracked. It's a whole different thing. But he was on my chest, and the nurse was writing down that I was denying putting him in the little
bassinet.
The bassinet. I'm well, I'm just holding him. I'm not even sleeping. I just held him.
Oh God.
And you held him when I slept for during that nap during the day. I remember feeling so weird that they were you're denying putting your
poor language.
Unsafe sleep. I'm unsafe sleep. I'm literally sitting up with him on my chest. He's sleeping on me. How is that unsafe? But just right from the start, and because I had already gone through with Poppy, I was already but I feel if you're a brand new mom and you're feeling oh, I'm doing unsafe, it makes you feel really stressed right from the start, and you haven't even left the hospital yet.
Yeah, I think that's that's poor language in the chart keeping. Because I work at a hospital, and we spend a lot of time in the newborn nursery, and the language that you have to use is pretty annoying in nurseries because it's just keeping the charts accurate and covering their butts.
Right, from lawsuits, I'm sure, right?
But I think you have to somehow figure out, is your gut trustworthy? Because for some people, they've experienced trauma, they've had a difficult history, they don't, so their gut check doesn't work really well. But if you have a good gut, then if you have any questions or you feel uncomfortable with what's happening at the hospital, just know that you're the parent.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Speak
You
up.
have to be confident. It's the
You
same
have to
thing with
speak up.
Jaden going off and making her own decisions. You have to feel like that as a parent too. Like you have to trust your own
Yeah.
intuition.
And if you don't, it's great to have a partner. For both of you guys, it's like a great example of like, am I being paranoid? Or is this, like check in with each other, because if you're lucky enough to have a partner and a relationship with a partner where you can do that, you guys can be each other's guts. When you're like, I've lost my way.
Right.
I'm so like flooded with stress right now. I can't see clearly. Can you help me? But it has to be a trustworthy person. Otherwise, you'll feel inadequate and anxious.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you
had
for having
so
me.
much fun. Where can everyone find you?
I am on Instagram on @RaisingGoodHumans podcast. So I have a podcast, Raising Good Humans, and I have a book called The 5 Principles of Parenting, even though I just was saying, like, don't listen to any particular thing.
This is the perfect book.
But I think
This book
good
is
to
really
have-
good.
Yeah.
No, it's just sort of like the big picture stuff and how to translate it to the little moments, like even sleep or feeding or whatever, or discipline or any of the things. But it's really talks about like the actual, like what really matters according to the science,
The
and then
data.
kind of merging them with your values and your child's temperament, and then clearing away the noise. So I sort of try to myth bust a little bit. But what I really think is that if you, we have tons of free resources at the Mount Sinai Parenting Center, which is in New York, and it's online.
Okay.
Of course, I cannot remember the website. I didn't want to write a book for the reason that I was like, people have too many books, there's too much stress. And then I did, because I realized like some people like a book that they can just go to over the years and it's the same. I just wanted it in one place. Like if
I
you
like
have a
that.
12-year-old or a 2-year-old, it sort of was just like a guide. But also I want people to not get it if it's like another book to stress you out. In the same way, like for the podcast, I feel like listen if it gives you ease, and don't if it's annoying. And if you go to Instagram and you're like, that advice just made me feel like a bad mother or a bad father, then do not follow me. Like go to somebody that like your nervous system should have like a sense of ease when you hear people that you're going to for this very vulnerable content. And if it doesn't, myself included, like I just think like turn it off.
I think if you're self-aware and you're trying to become a better parent, then you already are on the right track.
It's so self-selecting. Like when I have parent groups and I give talks sometimes and a lot of times, and I'm always like, nobody that's here is at risk for being a crappy parent. You might have some bad moments and you might do some wacky things, but on balance, like it's very self-selecting. If you are curious and intentional, like you're good. So I think it's just, what gives you ease? For me, I like content and information.
That's how I am.
Otherwise, I wouldn't
thrive
do
off
this.
that. I'm like, oh, I love
Right.
the science behind it. I
If
want to
that-
know the best. Like, let me just try to know the best, and then I can go from there.
Then you can go from there. But for people who are like, that makes me anxious, don't get those books. Don't listen to that. Or if you're like, I like hearing, but I don't want to read, just know that and
Like drive in the car,
listen
turn
to
it on. Right.
Go by topics. Sometimes you're going to think this is a good topic, and sometimes you're like, I don't want to hear about that. That's going to freak me out. It's about teenagers and I have a toddler.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's so good. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
thank you.
Thank you for having
Sharing
me.
all your tips. And we will be implementing all these with Jaden when we get home.
I know, right? We have a
Mission
long
statement
list,
starting tomorrow.
Jaden.
Okay, bye guys.